We move on to the second hour of this morning's broadcast and this morning's edition of News and Views right here on Salam Media. And this hour of the News and Views is sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency. Africa Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond. Still to come shortly, we will be talking about the Libyans, the White River Ride, more questions and answers with Ashraf Essop, specialist immigration attorney, who will be weighing in. Also taking a look at behind the scenes of the controversial Venezuela elections. South African observers were present, and we know the opposition in Venezuela crying foul in terms of the outcome of the elections being free and fair. And also, we're excited about media and humanitarian journalists, and this is a tour with award-winning Al Jazeera journalist Yumna Al Said, who will be in South Africa shortly. And we will be talking with Yumna Al Said herself this morning towards the end of the broadcast. And clearly, at Salam Media, humanitarian journalism, which is an ethos that we subscribe to, which is a principle that we subscribe to, and having someone the caliber of Yumna Al Said in the country with us and right across the length and breadth of the country once again on a tour. We are excited. So we will introduce you to that tour when we talk with Yumna Al Said later on. But now focusing on the case against the 95 Libyans who were arrested for an alleged illegal military camp in Mpumalanga. This case has been postponed now to the 5th of August. And the reason given is they appeared in court, and now for the court to find an interpreter. And we see statements already coming through from the Mpumalanga NPA spokesperson, Monica Nuswa, saying that there's prima facie evidence that the Libyans have a case to answer. Ashraf Essop, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and thank you for having me.
Yes, Jazakallah khairan so much for your time. Now, it is clear that, a number of issues have already started to surface with regard to these 95 Libyans who were arrested. And we see now that they are being charged with immigration violations.
That appears to be what's in the press right now. Now, you'll appreciate that we don't have all of the facts. For example, we haven't seen the charge sheet, we haven't seen the docket, we haven't seen anything. So let's presume for our discussion that the state is saying that there was an immigration violation. The first thing we have to bear in mind is the South African Constitution protects every person within its border. And of course, citizens are protected outside South Africa's border. So we have a very wide and generous constitution. Part of the constitution ensures equality before the law and a fair, you have to get justice and a fair legal procedure. Now, let's assume that these immigration violations that are complained about are true. Well, there's a number of questions that we have to ask. Number one, Libyans don't ordinarily get visas to enter South Africa. So in terms of the Immigrations Act, if you don't have a facility near you or in your country, you got to apply from abroad to the nearest country. So here's 95 applications that appear at our embassy in Tunisia. That's the first thing. How did 95 applications all appear together in Tunisia? When did they appear? Who made the application? If the state's case now is that we're going to postpone for an Arabic interpreter, can you imagine now filling out English forms, then traveling all the way here? And if what we hear is true, this was an illegal military facility. We will come to that shortly. If that is true, what was the medium of instruction? Then who paid for these things? There's a number of documents that have to accompany such an application. For one, the institution has to give a letter of support. It has to say three things. We have accepted a student. This is the duration of the studies, and the fees have been paid. These students also, by law, have to provide their own medical aid. So again, there was a contract with a medical aid provider. So you can see what I'm saying. There's a lot of red herrings that we're not sure yet. Where is the immigration violation? Now, if they came for bona fide studies, and if you went to study English language, for example, that institution had to be registered with the regulatory body. If you come for pilots training, that institution has to be regulated or has to be registered with the regulatory body. In this case, what we understand is that this was a company that was registered at SIPSI, and we don't know if they were registered with SIRA. Now, this is a very serious thing because there was a case back in 2018 which made it clear that due to the security concerns of the Republic, that not everyone could become a security officer. Anyway, it went all the way to the Constitutional Court. Constitutional Court said, no, everyone has a right to equality and to earn a living, and you can't be placing barriers against such participation. So you can imagine if there are a number of firearms. Look, from what I understand, there weren't real firearms. I mean, the pictures show plastic firearms, but if there were firearms, they were registered to the institution. So, as I'm saying, there's too many questions for us to actually make a proper assessment. But let's not remember that the visa is not a right, it's simply a privilege and can be withdrawn at any stage. However, it'll be interesting to see what input Home Affairs has, both in regard to the institution as well as the individual applicants. What we understand is that these applicants were not arrested for being there at an illegal, they were arrested for common crimes in the township nearby, you see, rape and drunkenness, etc. So it's also worrying that such large numbers of people come in, obviously not as tourists because the study visa is much longer, and that there wasn't sufficient vetting of both the institution inviting the applicants or questions raised about how come so many have come in and what their purpose is. Now, let's assume for a minute they say Libya has got oil facilities and we were training to be security guards. Well, you'll expect that kind of training situation because, it's not like patrolling a flat area. This is patrolling oil refineries, etc. So let's wait and see. At the moment, I don't think we have too many answers. I think as you say, we have a lot more questions.
Well, this is the reason why we are saying this. And but again, like you mentioned, the vetting process, and I'm sure it's quite a robust process. If all the T's were crossed and I's were dotted, Ashraf, in terms of this entire vetting process, because we're not talking about a handful of individuals that just slipped into the country. We are talking about 95 people, and that number is quite substantial. But when you have the NPA spokesperson saying that there is prima facie evidence that the Libyans have a case to answer, I'm not too sure what she meant at this point in time. But again, one needs to look at the visa regime in South Africa, even if it came through Tunisia. At the end of the day, it is the South African embassy that was involved, and I'm sure a lot of information or a lot that could be shed light on this matter sure would come through from the embassy itself.
No, for sure. And you see, what has happened since October last year, because of the number of applications that could not be processed at head office, the Department of Home Affairs against the under the erstwhile Minister, Dr. Motsoaledi, gave back the authority and the power to embassies and consulates around the world to deal with short-term visas. So there was a lot of discretion employed there. It'll be interesting to see what the paperwork shows. But South Africa, as I said, has a tremendously vibrant legal system based on the constitution. Now, I'm told or I'm hearing that the visas are already cancelled and they've been ordered to be deported. It doesn't end there. You see, there's no question that they came in through a port of entry, so there was no illegal entry. There was a visa. This is all in terms of the Immigrations Act. Now, if such a decision is made, it has to be accompanied by reasons, reasonable reasons. And then You have an internal system of appeals and reviews within the Department of Home Affairs before you seek judicial review. So I think this matter is far from over if the advisors to the suspects are to look deeply into the Immigrations Act. There's a whole step by process that you have to follow when you're faced with such an administrative decision. The administrative decision has to be, in terms of the Constitution, lawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair. And these things are governed by the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act, which is it's just quite a rigorous piece of legislation. It really ensures fair play.
Well, certainly, Ashraf. But also, I think, when we look at statements being made that further investigations will determine whether additional charges can be added, and now we have this whole thing about suspected secret military camp, and that actually just moves away from some of the key issues that you mentioned early on in terms of the whole visa regime and the entire process that unfolded from an administrative point of view. And a lot of focus now seems to be on the secret military camp in White River.
You see, I differ. I don't think there was anything secret. There was signs there that said, "Look, you can't enter beyond." The locals knew of this. This wasn't a new institution. In fact, there are reports that certain parts of Libya obviously is governed by warlords and not the UN appointed government in Tripoli. And they recruiting from all over the world. There was a report yesterday that they were recruiting ex-Irish soldiers. Now, it's so strange. Where would you find the need and necessity to bring those students all the way down to South Africa? Not long ago, you remember in December last year, 140 Afghans that were previously employed by the US, pitched up in Zimbabwe, came to South Africa after 30 days, demanded entry on the basis of seeking asylum. Now, what if these 95 applicants say, "Listen, if we go back, we're going to be killed. We're now seeking asylum"? They're protected by the asylum laws of this country. They're going to have to be given a chance to go and make an application for asylum because we don't know anything about them. I mean, what kind of military activity, who sent them, who paid for them, how did they get here, who paid for their school fees, who paid for their medical aid at minimum of 800 rands a month. Those facilities were not Mickey Mouse. Those were serious facilities there. That means the study facility or the facility there was well equipped. Some of the equipment looked new. So I don't think it was overnight. And this is what makes the case interesting when you have to dig deep into it. The question of further investigation is very important. As you said, there was a prima facie case. If there's no prima facie case, well, the case will be thrown out the next day. Then when the matter is postponed for any reason, in this case, a Arabic-speaking interpreter, it's critical because you've got to understand the language in which you are charged. It's a constitutional right. That will come and go. And then ultimately, there will be some decision made whether they're going to get bail or not. Now, bail is different from the ultimate finding in a court of law. Bail is determined about whether you're going to be a flight risk, whether you're going to be harming anyone if you are let out, and whether you have a permanent address. And those things will have to be determined on an individual basis. So I think, the road is very, very long.
Well, it certainly is a long road, but also at the same time, we've also heard statements being made that there could be other camps right across the entire country. Now, this actually opens up a whole new discussion and a whole new debate.
No, for sure. Forget camps. There was a report of a school in the Cape that seems to not recruit, but seems to have a large number of students studying there that ultimately immigrate to hotspots in the Middle East. So how far does this thing go, you see? And it's very interesting to find out who exactly is behind this and what happens, to people that come here. I mean, what if they say that they were smuggled here on the promise of jobs? After they finish, they could be security guards. Then there's a case of human trafficking, as we see a lot of these cases coming out of the subcontinent. Workers being brought here, their passports held back, and they become worker slaves. So, too many questions, and we don't just have any answers at this stage. Let's wait and see.
Yes, I believe they are appearing on the 5th of August. So, Ashraf, I'm sure you'll be watching with interest. So will we as well. But for now, Jazakallah khairan so much for your time, for unpacking with us what you have this morning right here on Salam Media. All the best to you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ashraf Essop, specialist immigration attorney, with us this morning. We are for another break. We'll be back.